Adults over 60 who had more of one natural pigment showed measurably thicker gray matter in memory regions, and the amount needed is less than a cup of cooked spinach. Researchers tracked this pigment, lutein, using brain scans across double-blind, placebo-controlled trials lasting 12 months. Those who consumed enough lutein completed the same memory tasks with less brain activity, which means their brains were working more efficiently. Most adults over 60 take in just 1 to 3 milligrams per day, far below the research-backed level. The foods that close that gap are probably already in your grocery store. Memory slips after 60 aren't imaginary, they're measurable, and they start earlier than most people want to admit. The brain begins losing gray matter volume in its 60s, especially in two regions that matter for daily life. The prefrontal cortex handles planning, decision-making, and processing speed. The hippocampus encodes new memories and retrieves old ones. When these areas thin, you don't forget everything at once. You search for a word a little longer. You misplace your keys more often. You feel like you're running on a slightly slower processor, and the difference is large enough that you notice. Processing speed is one of the first cognitive functions to decline with normal aging. It's the difference between following a recipe smoothly and needing to reread each step 3 times. It's what lets you manage a calendar, handle a conversation with multiple threads, or navigate a new device without frustration. When processing speed drops, independence starts to feel fragile. You might hesitate to drive somewhere unfamiliar. You might avoid learning a new banking app. These aren't character flaws. They're the natural consequence of a brain that's losing structural support in the very regions that manage those tasks. Most people hear gray matter atrophy and assume it's inevitable. The research doesn't support that resignation. Studies published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition have linked higher vegetable intake to preserved brain volume in aging adults. The brain retains plasticity, the ability to adapt and respond to input, well into old age, which means what you eat at 65 still matters at 85. The window isn't closed, it's open, but it responds to what you actually do. So the question isn't whether your brain can change, it's what you can give it to work with. And what the research keeps pointing to is a pigment most people associate with eye health, not memory. But the brain scans tell a very different story. Lutein is a carotenoid. That's the family of pigments that make carrots orange and spinach dark green. Your body can't manufacture carotenoids. You have to bring them in through food. Here's what makes lutein different from the others. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, the protective filter that surrounds your brain and keeps most substances out. Think of the blood-brain barrier as a security checkpoint. Most compounds from your bloodstream are turned away. Lutein gets through, and once it's inside, it accumulates in specific areas at concentrations higher than anywhere else in the body. The frontal cortex, which handles reasoning and decision-making, holds significant lutein deposits. So does the hippocampus, the memory center, and the visual cortex, which processes what you see. These aren't random locations, they're the exact regions that show the earliest thinning in normal cognitive aging. The fact that lutein concentrates there suggests your brain is actively using it, not just storing it. Lutein travels with a close relative called zeaxanthin. They're both xanthophil carotenoids, and they often appear together in food and in brain tissue. In the trials we'll discuss, they were given together because that's how nature packages them. Inside the brain, lutein acts as an antioxidant. Think of oxidation as a slow rusting process. Every cell in your body produces waste as it works. That waste, called free radicals, damages nearby tissue if it's not cleared. Antioxidants neutralize that waste before it can do harm. In the brain, this matters enormously because brain cells are expensive to replace. Most neurons don't regenerate. You protect the ones you have, or you lose them. Lutein also reduces low-grade inflammation, the chronic immune activity that, when it persists, wears down healthy tissue instead of protecting it. After 60, low-grade inflammation tends to rise. It doesn't stay in one place, it travels, and the brain is one of the destinations. Lutein appears to dampen that response. There's another mechanism that's worth understanding. Lutein supports the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. BDNF is essentially fertilizer for your neurons. It helps them form new connections and maintain old ones. Without adequate BDNF, neural plasticity drops. With it, the brain keeps adapting. It's one of the molecular reasons your brain can still change in your 70s. So, lutein isn't a stimulant. It doesn't wake you up like caffeine. It's structural support for the tissues that handle memory, speed, and executive function. You won't feel it in an hour. You'll see it in the scans. And what those scans show is worth understanding before your next grocery run. In 2021, researchers at Tohoku University and Anglia Ruskin University published a systematic review that pulled together 9 neuroimaging studies on healthy older adults. 7 used MRI scans, 2 used EEG. The goal was simple: see whether lutein intake changes what the brain looks like and how it performs. 3 of the studies were randomized controlled trials, the strongest design in clinical research. Participants took either a daily supplement containing 10 milligrams of lutein and 2 milligrams of zeaxanthin, or an identical-looking placebo for 12 months. Neither the participants nor the researchers knew who got which pill until the study ended. This design eliminates bias. If someone knows they're taking a brain supplement, they might feel sharper even if the pill is inert. The placebo control removes that possibility. At the end of those 12 months, the lutein group showed measurable differences. Their total gray matter had increased in prefrontal regions compared to the placebo group. During memory tasks, their dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex showed greater activity. These are the command centers for working memory and focused attention. And during rest, their brains showed stronger functional integration between networks, meaning different regions were communicating more effectively. That's the intervention evidence, and it's powerful because it shows cause. But here's where it gets important. The cross-sectional studies are equally telling in a different way. In these, researchers looked at older adults who already had high or low lutein levels from their regular diets, then scanned their brains. They didn't give anyone a pill. They simply measured what was already there. People with higher lutein showed greater gray matter volume in the parahippocampal gyrus, the region that links memory to spatial awareness and crystallized intelligence. They also showed higher white matter integrity in the cingulum, a fiber tract that connects memory regions to the rest of the brain. White matter integrity is what allows signals to travel quickly between regions. When white matter frays, the brain slows down. Lutein levels predicted how intact those fibers were. Now, here's the part that gets interesting. During cognitive tasks, those with higher lutein levels needed less brain activity to get the same result. Their brains didn't work harder, they worked smarter. In neuroscience, that's called neural efficiency. It's a marker of a healthy, well-maintained brain. A younger brain typically shows this pattern. Finding it in older adults with higher lutein suggests their brains are aging more gracefully. Researchers at the University of Illinois, led by Naaman Khan, have been tracking this for years. Their work confirms that lutein accumulates in the gray matter of brain regions tied to cognitive preservation in healthy aging. The imaging evidence is now strong enough that the question has shifted from, does lutein affect the brain, to how do we get enough of it into daily life? I want to be transparent about the limitations. 6 of the 7 MRI studies drew from similar datasets, which raises questions about whether these findings will replicate across different populations. All studies were conducted in North America, and the supplement trials used pills, not whole foods. So we can't say with certainty that a cup of kale will produce the exact same MRI changes as a 10 milligram tablet. But the cross-sectional data, which looked at food-derived levels, point in the same direction. The pattern is consistent across multiple study types, and that's what builds confidence. So what does that actually mean for you? It means the dose used in those trials isn't theoretical. It's achievable with a single serving of food. The clinical trials used 10 milligrams of lutein per day. Let's look at what that means in food. 1 cup of cooked kale delivers roughly 44 milligrams of lutein. That's more than 4 times the trial dose in a single serving. 1 cup of cooked spinach delivers about 26 milligrams. Raw spinach is lower, around 3.6 milligrams per cup, because cooking concentrates the pigment by removing water. A cup of cooked broccoli gives you about 3 milligrams. A medium avocado contributes roughly 0.3 milligrams. Corn, kiwi, and orange bell peppers add smaller amounts that can tip you over the target when combined with a main source. Here's the problem. The average American adult consumes roughly 1 to 3 milligrams of lutein and zeaxanthin combined per day. Most people are running at roughly 1/10 of the research-backed level without knowing it. This isn't a deficiency that shows up on a standard blood panel. Your doctor doesn't routinely test for it. There's no widely used clinical cutoff for lutein insufficiency. But the neuroimaging studies suggest the gap matters in ways that standard blood work doesn't capture. Eggs are a special case. A single large egg yolk contains roughly 0.2 to 0.3 milligrams of lutein, which sounds small. But the fat in the yolk helps your body absorb it far more effectively than many plant sources eaten alone. Lutein is fat-soluble. Without some dietary fat alongside it, a lot of the lutein passes through unabsorbed. That's why sautéing spinach in olive oil or eating eggs with vegetables is more effective than either one alone. The fat unlocks the pigment, so the combination matters as much as the ingredient itself. You don't need exotic imports or expensive powders. Frozen kale and spinach retain their lutein content well. The freezing process doesn't degrade the carotenoids significantly. Frozen greens are often more practical than fresh because they keep longer and are already washed and chopped. Canned is less ideal, but still contributes. The barrier isn't cost or availability, it's awareness. Most people simply don't know that the greens section of the grocery store contains a nutrient that brain researchers are watching on MRI scans. The research points to consistency, not perfection. 1 lutein-rich serving on most days is enough to move the needle. There's no need to overhaul your entire diet. You need a reliable habit. Breakfast is the easiest place to start. A 2-egg omelet with a handful of spinach sautéed in olive oil hits the benchmark before you leave the house. If you prefer a smoothie, blend raw spinach with full-fat yogurt or a spoonful of nut butter. The fat ensures absorption. Adding a quarter of an avocado to the smoothie helps too. For lunch, a kale salad with avocado and an olive oil dressing covers you for the day. Massaging the kale with oil softens the leaves and makes them easier to eat raw. If you find mature kale too bitter, baby kale is milder and just as dense in lutein. A cup of cooked kale added to soup or stew also works well. The cooking liquid holds some of the nutrient, so don't drain it aggressively. Dinner can be as simple as steamed broccoli tossed with butter or a side of braised greens. Southern-style collards, Italian-style spinach with garlic, or Asian-style bok choy all deliver lutein with enough flavor that it stops feeling medicinal. Even a simple egg drop soup with spinach checks the box. If you eat out, look for sides of sautéed spinach or broccoli. If you order an omelet, ask for extra vegetables. These are small adjustments that accumulate. The goal isn't to become a different eater. It's to put one lutein-rich food in front of yourself most days. What if you genuinely dislike leafy greens? Then eggs become your primary vehicle. A 3-egg scramble with bell peppers and cheese gives you some lutein with excellent absorption. It isn't as dense as kale, but it moves you in the right direction. Kiwi slices for dessert add a small top-up. The point is progress, not a perfect score. The key insight from the trials is that the brain responds over months, not days. The MRI changes were measured after 12 months of daily intake. That's not a discouragement, it's a reason to start now, while the brain still has the plasticity to respond. The foods you eat today are building the brain you'll have next year. You don't need to feel different tomorrow. You need to stack good days until they become a pattern. Memory preservation doesn't require an extreme diet. It requires one evidence-backed nutrient delivered consistently, through foods you can buy at any grocery store. At 60 and beyond, your gray matter still reacts to what you feed it. Lutein isn't a miracle. It's structural support for memory and speed. If you found this useful, subscribe. Next week, another nutrient tied to blood sugar and mental clarity, and the food sources will surprise you.